My name is Elena Whitmore. I'm 34 years old, and until recently, I believed I had built a life that made sense. I was engaged to a man I'd been with for 3 years, a man I trusted, planned with, and thought I knew. Our wedding was 8 months away. The venue was booked. Deposits were paid. The guest list had been debated and revised more times than I could count. From the outside, our life looked settled, safe, earned. We met the way most modern relationships begin, through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue. He was charming without trying too hard, observant, funny in a quiet way that made people lean in instead of laugh loudly. He remembered small details about me, how I hated cilantro, how I needed coffee before conversation, how I preferred mountains to beaches. When he proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains, I cried. Not the dramatic kind, the stunned, silent kind. The kind that comes from thinking, oh, this is it. This is the part where everything starts making sense. For a long time it did. Until 6 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary in the way Tuesdays usually are. I had picked up takeout from his favorite place downtown. The one with the ridiculous wait times and overpriced noodles he insisted were worth it. We were supposed to go over wedding vendor options. The florist had sent 3 packages. The photographer needed a deposit decision by Friday. Instead, he was on his phone. Not casually scrolling, not answering a quick text. Typing. Rapidly. Jaw tight. Expression sharp enough to cut glass. I asked what was wrong. He waved me off without looking up. 20 minutes passed. The food went cold between us. Then he looked up and said the sentence that quietly dismantled everything I thought I knew. "My friends don't like you," he said, "so keep your distance from them." No build-up, no hesitation, no explanation. Just that. I set my fork down slowly. The sound of it against the plate felt louder than it should have. "Excuse me?" I asked. "You heard me," he said, eyes already drifting back to his phone. "They think you're awkward at gatherings, that you try too hard. They asked me to tell you to give them space." It felt like being slapped without the courtesy of anger. These were people I had spent years around. Birthdays, game nights, long brunches. I had helped one of them move apartments in the middle of July. I'd driven another to the airport at 5 in the morning when her car broke down. I'd listened to their relationship problems, celebrated promotions, shown up, over and over again. "Which friends?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Does it matter?" he replied. "Just don't come to the gathering this weekend." Something in his tone wasn't apologetic. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was irritated, like I was an inconvenience he'd finally decided to address. "Okay," I said. He blinked, clearly expecting resistance. "Okay," I repeated. "Done." The relief on his face was instant, almost visible. I finished eating in silence, helped clean up like I always did, left earlier than usual. He kissed me at the door like nothing had happened, said he'd call me tomorrow, mentioned being busy with work. Here's what he didn't know. 2 of his closest friends had already reached out to me 3 weeks earlier. It started with Marissa, his friend from college, 12 years of history, former roommate, the one who always hugged me a little too tightly, like she was holding something back. She messaged me on a Thursday afternoon asking if we could grab coffee, just the 2 of us. Said she needed to talk about something important. I assumed it was wedding related. It wasn't. She looked terrified when we met. Hands shaking, coffee untouched. "I'm probably breaking girl code," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "but I can't watch you walk into this blind." That's when my stomach dropped. "He's been cheating on you," she said, "with his ex-girlfriend, for months." The cafe faded into noise. She showed me screenshots, messages, photos, plans, timestamps going back to late March, right after we booked our venue. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I thanked her for telling me. Then I asked her not to tell him we'd talked. I needed time. 2 days later, another friend confirmed everything. More evidence, more details. That's when I understood something important. The sentence he'd said to me that night wasn't impulsive. It was strategic. And he thought I was still in the dark. He was wrong. For 3 weeks after Marissa showed me those messages, I lived inside a version of my life that felt staged. Not fake, performed. Every morning, I woke up next to a man who had been lying to me for months. Every kiss landed wrong. Every love you scraped against my skin like sandpaper. But I didn't react. I didn't confront him. I didn't spiral. I watched. The second friend, Hannah, reached out 2 days after Marissa. She apologized before she even sat down. "I thought it was just cold feet," she said, twisting her napkin. He kept calling her his escape. I didn't think he meant it literally. Escape. That word stuck with me. Apparently, his ex-girlfriend, Lydia, wasn't just a mistake. She was contingency planning. Something familiar and exciting he could run back to whenever wedding stress felt too real. He joked about keeping her on the side, about how marriage didn't have to mean closing doors, just choosing priorities. I was the obligation. Lydia was the thrill. What hurt most wasn't just the sex or the secrecy. It was how carefully he'd curated two versions of himself. With me, he talked about houses, children, school districts, budgets, stability. With her, he talked about freedom, nostalgia, what life used to feel like before responsibility. I had never heard him say he felt trapped. Not once. To my face, everything was fine. So when he told me his friends didn't like me, when he asked me to step back, I finally understood what was happening. He wasn't protecting them from me. He was protecting himself from the truth leaking out. Distance wasn't about awkwardness. It was about isolation. And once I saw that clearly, something inside me went quiet. Not numb, focused. I decided then that I wouldn't confront him emotionally. I wouldn't cry or scream or demand explanations he'd already rehearsed excuses for. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of watching me unravel while he minimized everything into misunderstandings and stress and nothing meaning anything. I needed facts, clean ones. So I hired a private investigator, a woman, recommended by a divorce attorney friend who specialized in discrete relationship cases. I told her I didn't need drama. I need timelines, I said, locations, frequency. I need to know if this is over, or if it's still happening. She nodded like she'd heard this speech 100 times. Give me 2 weeks, she said. Those 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. On the surface, nothing changed. I texted him good morning, asked about his day, listened while he complained about work. We talked about honeymoon destinations, beaches versus mountains, like irony hadn't already hollowed the word compromise. I smiled when he showed me suit options. I nodded during cake tastings. At night, when he slept, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how long he'd been practicing lying without flinching. The investigator called me early on a Monday. I'm done, she said. The folder she handed me later that day made my hands shake. Hotels across town, always mid-range, always booked during lunch hours or early evenings when he claimed to be working late. His apartment, 20 minutes from her office. Convenient? Efficient? My apartment. Twice. Security footage from my building. Timestamps. His key code used while I was out of town for work. That detail broke something small and final inside me. The photos weren't explicit. They didn't need to be. Him kissing her in a parking garage. Her car parked overnight outside his building. Dinner receipts from neighborhoods we'd never visited together. And it was still happening. As recently as 5 days ago. The day before, he told me his friends didn't like me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat very still and thought, okay, now I know exactly who I'm dealing with. That night, he asked why I was quiet. Just tired, I said. He kissed my forehead. I let him. Because now this wasn't about heartbreak. It was about control. And I wasn't going to lose it. Once you know you're being lied to, the world changes shape. You stop hearing words as truth and start hearing them as strategy. So for the next 2 weeks, I became an actress inside my own life. The calm, supportive fiancé who still believed in us, still cared about seating charts and centerpiece colors, still laughed at his dumb jokes like nothing was rotting underneath. He thought I was fine. He mistook my silence for forgiveness he hadn't even asked for. Meanwhile, I started dismantling the life we'd built, quietly, piece by piece, the same way you remove glass from a broken window, carefully, so you don't cut yourself while you're cleaning up someone else's mess. First, I contacted the vendors. I didn't call all at once. I spaced it out, like I was handling ordinary scheduling problems, not the collapse of a future. The venue coordinator listened, then sighed, like someone who'd witnessed this exact scene too many times. I'm so sorry, she said gently. I can transfer your deposit to a future date if you ever... I won't, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. But thank you. The photographer refunded a portion. The DJ offered credit. The florist was blunt. Flowers had already been ordered for the sample arrangements, but she could return a chunk. Every call felt like cutting a thread. I should have felt devastation. What I felt was clarity. Next, money. We had a joint account for wedding expenses. Small deposits here, payments there. I pulled statements and reviewed them like a forensic accountant, line by line. At first, I was only looking for what I needed to cancel. Then I noticed the pattern. Charges under $50. Small enough to slip past casual attention. Parking. coffee, wine bars, restaurants I'd never heard him mention. And once I knew where his ex lived, those locations lined up like a map. Our money wasn't just paying for the wedding he was sabotaging. It was funding the affair. That discovery didn't hurt like betrayal. It burned like humiliation. I opened a new bank account he didn't know about and began moving my money gradually. Not so much that he'd notice a sudden drop, but enough to ensure I was no longer financially tied to a man who treated loyalty like a temporary setting. I changed passwords, streaming services, grocery delivery, shared calendars, even the stupid loyalty points app for that takeout place. Every click felt like reclaiming something. Then I started moving my things. Not dramatically, not with suitcases and slammed doors. A box of books one day. My grandmother's quilt the next. The one he'd always called old-fashioned, but loved curling under during movie nights. Winter coats. Important documents. Anything sentimental. Anything irreplaceable. I redirected my mail to my parents' address. Quietly removed my name from a lease renewal he had been planning for us to sign. And still, every night, I went back to his bed and lay beside him like I didn't know. Like I wasn't counting the days until I could finally breathe again. He started acting lighter, happier. The more distance I kept from his friend group, the more relaxed he became, like removing me from that circle had solved a problem he didn't want to explain. That was the part that disgusted me most. He didn't look guilty. He looked relieved. Then came the moment he casually mentioned the dinner party. A Saturday night, 8 people. His inner circle. The same friends who didn't like me. He brought it up the way someone mentions a grocery run. Just a small thing, he said, scrolling through his phone. You obviously won't be there, given everything. I stirred my coffee slowly. Actually, I said, I think I should come. He froze. Not subtle, not mild, frozen. Like his body had reacted before his brain could catch up. I told you they don't want you there, he said, voice too quick, too sharp. Funny thing, I replied, watching him closely. 2 of them specifically asked me to come. They said they missed me. His face drained so fast I thought he might actually be sick. They asked about me, I continued, multiple times. Said it's been weird you've been keeping us apart. He blinked hard like he was trying to reset reality through force. Then he stumbled into backtracking. Mixed signals, misunderstandings. Maybe he interpreted them wrong. I smiled, took a slow sip of coffee. And in that moment I saw it. The fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of being exposed. That night I sat alone in my car after work, staring at the investigator's folder on the passenger seat like it was a weapon. Because it was. I wasn't going to confront him in private where he could cry, twist the story, manipulate my emotions, and repaint himself as a confused man who made a mistake. No, I wanted witnesses. I wanted the truth to land in the room like a bomb. So I waited for Saturday, and I prepared my folder. I showed up with a bottle of wine he always said was wasted on his friends. Expensive, full-bodied, the kind he saved for special occasions. I arrived exactly on time. The door opened, and the room went quiet in that subtle way people don't realize they're doing until it's already happened. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Glasses hovered half-raised. Eyes flicked between me and him, trying to understand how I fit into a space I wasn't supposed to be in anymore. His 2 friends, Marissa and Hannah, visibly relaxed the moment they saw me. That told me everything. He, on the other hand, looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him and forgotten to warn gravity. Thanks for having me, I said calmly, setting the wine on the counter. I thought we should clear the air. No one laughed. No one spoke. Someone had been telling a story about work. It died unfinished. I waited until everyone had a glass in hand, until there was nowhere to look but at me. Then I placed the folder on the coffee table. I didn't slam it down. I opened it carefully, 1 page at a time. Printed screenshots, messages, photos, dates, locations, hotel receipts pulled from an email account he'd forgotten synced to his tablet, a clean, organized timeline laid out like evidence in a courtroom. I was told I'm the problem, I said evenly, that I make things uncomfortable, that I should keep my distance. I looked around the room. So I'm wondering if someone can explain why. The silence was immediate and suffocating. Someone's phone buzzed. No one moved. One woman covered her mouth with both hands. Another whispered, "Oh my God." He finally spoke. "You went through my phone," he said hoarsely. "I didn't have to," I replied. "Your friends cared enough about me to tell the truth." That's when he turned on them. Anger, panic, red-faced betrayal. "You had no right." "They had every right," I cut in. "You were planning to marry me while sleeping with your ex-girlfriend. In my apartment. Using our joint account to pay for hotels." I slid the highlighted bank statements forward. You want to see the charges? Parking fees, wine bars, restaurants you told me you were working late near. He tried to speak again. I didn't let him. You isolated me so they wouldn't talk. You told me they didn't like me, so I'd disappear quietly while you kept both lives intact. His ex's name hung in the air like smoke no one wanted to inhale. It's not what it looks like, he said, voice breaking now, tears starting. It's exactly what it looks like, I said. And what hurts isn't even her. It's that you lied to my face every day and made me feel crazy for noticing. I reached into my bag and pulled out the ring. The ring his grandmother had helped him choose. The one he'd slid onto my finger with shaking hands in the mountains. I placed it on top of the evidence. The sound echoed. We're done. No yelling. No insults. Just truth. I walked out while he stood there, surrounded by the wreckage he'd created. Behind me, the room exploded into voices, questions, accusations, disbelief. I didn't look back. The fallout was nuclear. Within 48 hours, everyone knew. Half his friend group cut him off entirely. His ex-girlfriend disappeared, blocked him, blocked everyone, claimed she didn't know we were still together. He called me 63 times in the first week. I blocked him after 15 voicemails. Saved them all. His mother emailed me an apology longer than most essays. His sister cried on the phone and asked why I didn't tell them sooner. I needed proof, I said, and I needed to protect myself. They understood. He tried to spin the story online, vague posts about privacy, betrayal, toxic relationships. Marissa shut it down in the comments with dates and screenshots. The post vanished within the hour. I moved into a new place a month later. Smaller, quieter, mine. I kept the dog we'd adopted together. When he tried to use her as leverage, I handled it through a lawyer. Clean, final. The wedding would have been in 3 months. Instead, I spent that money on myself. 2 weeks somewhere remote, mountains. Silence. No service. I remembered who I was before someone rewrote reality around me. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just finished. Finished being someone's backup plan. Finished sharing my life with someone who wanted safety from me and excitement from someone else. My life is mine again. And this time, access isn't free.